From Thanos in the Wild West to why did they hire KMBest, Marvel Snap players are passionate about a lot of things, but one thing they're more passionate about than anything else is yelling on the internet. This is Marvel Snap Hot Takes. Make every double mechanic into repeat and then release Scorpion Brand New Day as a double effect? Nice one. I think that this is a reasonable critique in the abstract that becomes a little less reasonable the more specific you get with it, which is to say that we had a problem with double effects in as much as they existed. The ones that were problematic were generic, and I would argue that those weren't actually problematic. My big thing with what they've done with Onslaught, what they've done with Wong is I don't really think that's a power level change. I don't think people were being dominated by Wong Onslaught decks. I think people were being put into unfun experiences by Wong Onslaught decks. Whereas with Scorpion Brand New Day, I think that his ability to scale with himself is actually pretty core to that card existing, which is one way of saying that fundamentally what Scorpion is doubling is way weaker than the wide portfolios that Wong and Onslaught had. Wong was doubling a bunch of stuff, and what you would do is you would stack things that doubled the doubler. So Wong Mystique would have multiple Wongs, right? Or for example, Onslaught Prodigy would onslaught the Prodigy, which would then onslaught the Prodigy, right? That's not really what's happening in the same way with Scorpion Brand New Day. So even if you take it into a question of portfolios and you say, okay, even if Scorpion's portfolio is only applying negative effects and Wong's portfolio is every on reveal ever made and Onslaught's portfolio is every ongoing ever made, and there's clearly a difference there, even if you ignore that difference, you still end up with there are ways to scale these cards with themselves that I think are not accessible or applicable to Scorpion. That said, to me, the compelling argument is the one of portfolio, which is to say it is probably a much bigger design limitation to have a card like Wong that doubles every on reveal or a card like Onslaught that doubles every ongoing than it is to have something that doubles something so niche as Afflicts. Like if they made a card that said double the amount of rocks in your opponent's deck, I don't think people would have the same visceral reaction. You know what I mean? Like to me, I don't think it's an issue of doubling is bad all the time so much as it's an issue of these kind of things can be problematic and need to be dealt with when they are. I'll also say this, though. I don't think they needed to nerf Wong and Onslaught. I don't think that makes a lot of sense to me. And it really frustrated me that they nerfed Wong and Onslaught when they were printing things like Mother Ascani, right? Like Mother Ascani, Frigga, that's the doubling that scares me. That's the stuff that keeps me up at night. Wong and Onslaught do not. And so I do agree that those maybe got an unfair tone down. Got a 2, maybe 3-parter here. First, we have reimagining popular and well-known characters is better for the game's long-term survival and gameplay experience than introducing obscure or lesser-known but new characters. And then Glenn Jones, former Marvel Snap card guy, responded implying that this is the coldest take of all time, which I basically believe that it is. It's almost as cold as the people who were like, the economy is bad, because this is cold a different way, where the economy is bad is cold because everyone in the community believes it. This one is cold because it's pretty clear the people making the game seem to believe it, right? Like, there's a lot of evidence that suggests that when they make new cards, they want those cards to find an audience. Now, I do think that there's something to be said. I am someone who has become, through Marvel Snap, a bit of a comics nerd, right? There is definitely stuff in the tank that I'd like to see them do. There's a bunch of really cool things they could do with Sins of Sinister. There's a bunch of really cool things they could do with Immortal Hulk. I love the idea of a Dario Augur card. A Zemnu card could be a really cool 6-drop and all of that. But I imagine most of the people that just heard me say those words are like, I don't know who the hell that is. And that is fundamentally a barrier that, like, the product probably has to overcome. And I think that there is something to be said about, like, if I am advertising myself as a Marvel game and I am not delivering on the main fantasy of Marvel, which is I could go play as Captain America and it'll be awesome, right? Captain America is going to be the star card of my deck. Cyclops is going to be the star card of my deck, and I can win games. I think there's a little tension between the idea that they shouldn't ever make a new character and the idea that they had to put cards like Cyclops, Hulk, Iron Man, Hawkeye at the front, right? I do think that that's real. And I think that that being a real thing means that Marvel Snap, in order to serve its audience, probably does need to do retrains. One thing that I find interesting is like how they choose them. It remains utterly baffling to me that we have a second Scorpion in the game before we get a second Iron Man. Like, I get it. He was in the movie or whatever, but like, it's Iron Man. What are we doing here? Like, honestly, a lot of my critique in this area is not that, like, I don't think there's interesting new cards for them to make, but that I think they sort of have to be deployed alongside people who people actually know in a meaningful way. And I do think that matters. Like, I do think when you have the choice between making a new Wolverine and making Exodus, it probably makes sense to make that new Wolverine. Lauren responded, it's not black and white. Do 2 big names per season. Doing full seasons of big names accelerates us towards the point where there are 4 cards for each big name. And that makes the game more confusing, hurting gameplay and community discussion. I'll say this. I do think it's a little bit rich to refer to like, oh, I have to call him Gun Thanos as hurting community discussion. But like generally, I don't disagree with this. I just think it's a little bit prescriptive. Oh, we have to have 2 and then we have to have 4 new ones. And it's like, I don't understand why you'd have to do that. I think what you'd really want is someone to just exercise some judgment and get new characters in while they can, and not to become, I guess what you'd say, like, I guess the sort of straw manning or steel manning, I'm not sure which I'm doing here, of why they're doing this is like they're a slave to the corporate balance sheet, right? Like they have to pump out a Spider season every year because people buy Spider stuff and they just have to do it, right? Like I do think that is not necessarily true, but I also think there's something to be said for the idea that, like, let's assume that is true. Why is it bad for them to do that, right? I have plenty of characters that I like that I would like to see in Marvel Snap. I also have enough awareness that my preferences for those characters are going to be pretty different from a lot of other people who can say the same sentence, right? I want Dario Agger. I want Zemnu. I want Wagnerine. I have like some specific people that I want. I want like Rasputin 4, right? Like I want certain things, right? And I think a lot of people agree on, I want so-and-so in Marvel Snap, but almost none of them agree on who so-and-so is. I want the Runaways. I want the people from Sins of Sinister. I want the rest of the X-Men roster. Like that, those are different things. And I don't think that the audience is there to serve all of them, but they all agree that they want somebody, right? And I think that that's a little bit of an interesting thing, because right now they're unified in saying, we want more of the people that we're looking for. We want more people who, for lack of a better term, glup shittos, right? No offense to the rest of the Runaways, but we can be realistic about this. And I think that is, like, to be clear, I read the Runaways comics both runs. Like I'm up to date. Like I like the Runaways. Like I think that there is something to be said about everyone is able to coalesce around what they don't like. But if you actually ask them who was supposed to be in the game, it would be a lot more difficult for there to be wide agreement that X character is the person who is missing. I think Marvel Snap has actually done a pretty good job getting a lot of people that I never heard of into this game. And I think it's also done a pretty good job. I think me as an example, getting someone like me who thought of the Marvel universe as sort of the MCU to be like someone who has downloaded the Marvel Unlimited app and is reading comics and knows who the Runaways are and has opinions about Immortal Hulk, right? Like, I think that is demonstrating that it is doing that job fairly well currently. And while there is a question of like, how many Wolverines do we need? I can't say that I've had a lot of problems calling the Horseman one Wolverine and then the Weapon X one Weapon X and then Wolverine. Kind of just hasn't been a problem for me, but I get it, but I think it's a little bit catastrophizing. Quick Draw seems super cool and fun to play. I just hope it's not contained to a single season like Zombie Horde was, and then we get more cards with these unique mechanics. This is going to be a really quick one. I super agree. Unless the mechanic just sucks, I feel like they should revisit it. And Zombie Horde is a great example of a mechanic that's so parasitic and so hard to get into a different season that I kind of understand the distaste for it, where something like Activate or Objective is like pretty clearly the kind of thing that can come back reasonably, right? And I think that there are levels to mechanics. I believe that Mark Rosewater, the, God King of Magic the Gathering, has a scale called the Storm Scale, which is about how likely mechanics are to return for various balance reasons or just whether or not they make sense in sets. I think that Horde is definitely on the high end of that, which is to say not particularly likely to return, would require some specific circumstances to. But I don't think Quick Draw necessarily requires guns, because drawing is also an action that happens in the course of a card game. I don't think it's particularly, I wouldn't expect it to be a Horde style only 1 month kind of mechanic. I would expect it to be somewhere closer to the ones like Activate and Objective that you could probably expect to see in the future, would be my guess. Like, it definitely feels a lot like it's somewhere in between those things, because there is a little bit of flavor in the mechanical wording of it, but I think it dodges enough of the Horde thing that it can make sense to actually make other cards with the mechanic that aren't specifically tied to having a gun and shooting it. One thing I wanted to shout out is my Discord now has an open submissions for hot takes. People can just put their hot takes in there, and then I will, when I need to do a video like this, just go in and yank them out of there. Feel free to utilize that. We're going to get to some of the Discord versions, not just a Twitter post nowadays, because I know people definitely want alternate avenues to reach me about this stuff. So with that said, while Supergiant is a great card that allows for budget decks, she's also super demanding with understanding how the game's mechanics work and how she interacts in a matchup, which makes her harder to learn compared to most cards. A card that is punishing for making a mistake and often having plays that aren't always obvious is not good for new players, and they're not going to have as much success with her as they would with something simpler like Destroy or Discard. The thrust of this, basically, is that it's bad for me to keep recommending Supergiant as a budget deck for new players, and I think to a degree, they are correct about their assessment of what Supergiant's issues may be for a new player. However, the economy is so bad. Like, I really can't stress this enough. This is like to me, recommending Supergiant is the cheapest best deck. It is the cheapest best deck. That is the best thing you can do. If you are someone who is interested in something other than the cheapest best deck, you should ask for something other than the cheapest best deck, because I can't be a mind reader and know what you might succeed more with. If you want to build a deck, that's fine, but don't ask me to take responsibility for giving you a deck and then be like, oh, well, actually, it has to fit me perfectly. Like, no, I'm going to tell you what the cheapest best deck is. The cheapest best deck is Supergiant. Yes, it is complex and difficult and hard to make work, but once you do that, you'll be very rewarding, and it'll be the best deck in the game that you can possibly acquire for the cheapest amount of expenditure. Full stop. End of story. It sucks that that's true. I would love if it weren't true. I would love if I could say, go get High Evolutionary and go play that. I can't. That's not intellectually honest of me. I know better. I know that Supergiant's a better deck. It would be intellectually dishonest of me to say, go play High Evo instead, or go play Destroy, or go play Discard, because to me, fundamentally, that is infantilizing. They are human beings. They contain the capacity to improve and get better, and I need to be able to assume that they are going to do that. And if they're not going to do that, that is kind of the issue, right? Like, I do to some degree talk about, like, you know, what would be an easy deck to climb with, right? I talk about that with Doom 2099 a lot. I love recommending Doom 2099. I cannot in good conscience go to a new player and be like, yeah, you should play Doom 2099, Series 5 Doom 2099, Series 5 Cosmic Ghost Rider. Maybe you should just go pick up Series 5 Caliban, who you won't run in any other deck. Maybe you can go and pick up Iska, who, you know, Series 5, you will play her elsewhere. Like, you see what I'm saying here, right? Like, it's just extremely, extremely difficult to straight-facedly look at someone and say, you should play a worse deck that's more expensive because I think you're too stupid to play this. Like, I don't think that. I don't think they're too stupid for this. It might be a bit of a learning curve, but my fundamental belief is that if you try, you can get good at card games. I believe that wholeheartedly, and I think they can too. The best part of Marvel Snap is the pacing. Packing the tension, bluffing, and resource management of a 20-minute card game into a 3-minute window without sacrificing too much strategic depth is the thing that keeps me coming back to this game. Mechanics, cards, and game modes that mess with this formula are pushing in the wrong direction. If draft mode makes the games take longer than a few minutes, the mode is doomed to fail. I could not agree more with this take. To the degree that I am not sure if I can even include it here because I agree so much with it that I'm worried it's a cold take. Marvel Snap's greatest innovation, they thought, I think, that it was, we made a card game where when you lose, you kind of still win, where your stakes management is a part of the game. I genuinely don't believe that. I think the greatest thing they did was make a card game that takes 3 minutes. Like, I think that they are wrong about what makes this game great. What makes this game great is that it's a great game and takes 3 minutes. That is what it is. And when we talk about what Conquest is and why it was such a miss, it's because Conquest is a game mode aimed at Magic players, Hearthstone players. Hey, go be competitive. It's our tournament mode, battle mode. Come compete in our game, right? That's not who Marvel Snap players are. It isn't. It just isn't. Marvel Snap players watch Alex Kocha instead of me. That is not a value judgment on either of us, but it is a statement about how much people take winning seriously in this game. Alex, Cozy, Dexter, they're good players, but their goal and their content is not and has not been about what is the thing that's going to win you the most games in Marvel Snap. It hasn't been. The biggest people in this content creator community are people who have fun. That's who it is. And that is what Marvel Snap has actually done well. They have compacted so much fun into 3 minutes of your time. That's what's really good about the game. Attempts to cater to people like me are probably misguided because people like me are going to be playing whatever card game is giving us $10,000 in prizing to play. That's what people like me are doing, right? That's not what we're not doing this. And so I do think that, like, this is objectively true. Marvel Snap is an amazing casual phone game. As someone in my comments put it, a toilet slop RNG game. That it's so good at that. That's what it is, right? Like, that's the audience. That's the people. And I love that Marvel Snap is deep enough that it can support someone like me too. Like, that is an amazing thing. But people like me are not the focus, and we shouldn't be. And I think that that is a real thing that gets lost in discussions of, like, you know, oh, we got to add more complexity and more competitive depth and all that stuff. Like, no, you got to keep it simple. Marvel Snap is great because it's simple. The depth is there. It's built into having 3 locations. It came free with the 3 locations. It's there. And I really think that, like, Marvel Snap, I don't know that the company that makes the game knows how good of a job they did. I really don't. The Marvel Snap community is generally very anti-AI art, yet a lot of the biggest creators seem perfectly happy using AI for thumbnails and social posts. I know those aren't the same thing, but they still contribute to the same feeling. Whenever I see obvious AI-generated content, it makes the poster video feel less authentic. Instead of drawing me in, it usually makes me scroll out. I find that disconnect a little odd. One use of AI is widely criticized, while the other seems to get a free pass. I'll say this, I have not used any AI-generated art in my thumbnails, although I do believe that the Photoshop of me with the gray hair from the one where I'm pretending to be Tucker Carlson, that, when I upload it to Twitter, Twitter recognized it as AI-generated. I got it from someone in my Discord. They might have used AI for that. Outside of that, I do not upload AI-generated images for many of the same reasons detailed here. It's just not my bag. I think they look bad, mostly. Like, not even to talk about whatever ethical considerations there are involved. Like, I just think that they look bad. And so I don't do that. I don't really know exactly who this person is talking about. I can think of a couple people, but my impression when I think of, like, the biggest Marvel Snap creators is I don't think they do that. Like, I don't think they do. Maybe I just haven't been paying attention. But that's just wanted to update y'all on where I was at here, which is I don't upload AI generated images. That's just not a thing that I do. I don't use them in thumbnails. I don't use them in social posts. And the only time that this may have been contravened, because I really don't know if it was, is like someone posted that in my Discord and I was like, I will use that for a thumbnail. They might have used AI to make it. It's just a picture of me with my hair recolored white. But yeah, like I genuinely, that's just where I'm at. We need more crossovers between Marvel Snap content creators and the people from Dropout who also play Marvel Snap. Yeah, I think if you watch Dropout, you can tell I'm a fan, right? Like the intro to this series is one that I stole from Mike Trapp, and I guess, by proxy also stole from Iffy Wadiway. It's basically just the intro to the Dropout show, actually, which I think the first few seasons are on YouTube. And for the record, if you don't know what I'm talking about when I talk about Dropout, go watch that. That's what I did. That's what got me into Dropout, is I watched them actually in some of the game changers that are available on YouTube, and now I'm a subscriber. This comes up because both Sam Reich and Vic Michaelis, two people that are on Dropout, in Sam's case owns Dropout, have been talking about Marvel Snap a little bit recently, and I know that you're not supposed to like visibly be a fan. It's a little bit gauche, but I am a fan, and it's definitely a situation where it's like, this would be like kind of a dream. It does seem a little bit ridiculous to ask for, though. All right, y'all. Thank you so much for watching. As always, I've been KMBest. You've been phenomenal, and I'll see you in the next one.